Welcome to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP, in association with thelibertybeacon.com. And I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Lenard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show. Today's show is about AI. As a former IT guy, it's a topic I felt I had to eventually get around to and into. And I've said over and over how the show corresponds and correlates with the LibertyBeacon.com piece. They complement each other. Sometimes they are very similar. Sometimes they are very different. There is always something different in the show than's in the piece, and in the piece that's in the show. This time, the show, ChristiTutionalist Politics on AI, is going to be very different than the LibertyBeacon.com piece, so make sure you check that out also. I am going to mention, by way of starting, something that's in the LibertyBeacon.com piece, as Rush, the rock group, not the radio show guy, used to sing, or still does in concert, I'm sure, via their show, The Spirit of Radio. You've probably heard the song, no doubt, whether you're a fan or not. You've undoubtedly heard the tune. But what they sung about regarding the music industry then holds true regarding AI and the book and movie industry today. Rush, in The Spirit of Radio, goes on to say, all this machinery making modern music can still be open-hearted, not so foolish-hearted, really just a question of your honesty. Yeah, your honesty. And that's the same here today with AI and people, I would dare say, dishonest people, lazy people, unimaginative people, plagiarists. Claudine Gay, we've talked about her recently in TLB pieces, stealing an AI thing and claiming it as their own. Now, terms of service aside, whether that's morally and or copyright law catching up to it eventually or not, legal or not, is, of course, one question. But again, your moral values and degree of honesty with yourself as well as others. I don't use AI other than in my books. A spell checker is an old form of AI, and frankly, hopefully the grammar checker aspects of AI get better, because Microsoft Word's version of spell and grammar check isn't all that great. Like, for instance, 222, the two dichotomy, TO, TOO, TWO. Spelling and grammar checker will accept any of the three, regardless of whether it's proper in the sentence you've put it in, because the AI isn't sophisticated enough to understand and actually look at the complete context of the sentence within the paragraph, within the page, within the chapter, to say, oh, TO is not correct. They meant TOO, or TWO, where they put TOO accidentally. Maybe it was typographical, just a brain fart, whatever. But on this show, I'm sticking more or less with the book industry, being an author and the author of How to Write a Book and Get It Published, Hints, Tips, and Techniques. Also, I will be talking with Liz Enton again, if you remember that name, the January special, What is an Atheist Doing on a Christian Show, where I talked to her about the afterlife, me from a religious standpoint, her from an atheist scientific aspect direction she was coming at it from. But we both agreed there is something more beyond this life. That's not the point here. I mentioned Liz again because I will be having Liz on another show, another special. Maybe we might record it. It hasn't been recorded yet. And of course, things could always fall through. But I've invited Elizabeth Enton back to discuss writing and publishing, talk about her journey bringing WTF Just Happened to the masses, about her book about afterlife, her epiphany, her enlightenment regarding that subject. So I'm inviting her back. Hopefully we can make that work, and we'll have a discussion on writing and publishing in general. So she relates in this. The same is true with movies. Many of you may have already heard Bruce Willis has signed a likeness and image contract with the studio because his health is bad. Let me throw these out before I forget. 1981 movie Looker with Susan Day of, yes, The Partridge Family and Albert Finney. You will see embeds of the trailer for that movie in the TLB piece, as well as trailer for Simone or Sim 1, depending on how you would pronounce that, the more recent Al Pacino movie, which broaches the concept of a Hollywood movie studio literally could buy a Cray computer in their office, never have to leave the office, and create a movie product using someone's likeness and image done by AI. All the background, no need for sets, done by AI. They can replicate Rome anytime, or Russia anytime, or Washington, D.C. anytime, past, present, future, sci-fi, future places. You've no doubt, or at least I hope for the point of the show, have seen AI imagining life elsewhere. Well, on this planet, the environment is such, and this kind of life, it's imagining of what that life could and would look like that could live on that planet. So AI can be good as long as we're honest and upfront about what's happening there, that AI is doing it. But I want to pivot back to books, again, being an author, and honesty. I've spoken out on this all the time. I was on a webinar last year. I lasted 10 minutes on a Save the Cat webinar. 10 minutes in, I discovered that not only was she peddling formulaic writing, which to me is dishonest, which is not to say certain elements and aspects of things will be in virtually every novel. Every novel can't be 100% original. There are certain writing elements and aspects that one or another will bring in that make sense. But my point here is it honest? Like in Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You. I'm not going to tell you it's unlike any and every other book ever written. That wouldn't be realistic. That would be a lie. There are certain storytelling aspects that you put in. But what I'm saying about the honesty, this Save the Cat, So not only was she peddling formulaic writing, which again is dishonest, there are certain writers who have no creativity and imagination. So they take the formula and basically borrow somebody else's story, change the name, change the time, change the locations, but the same basic story. And why do they do that? They're just out for money. Title A was a success. So I can copy Title A and just change the names, the dates, and the locations and hope my Title B is a big hit like Title A was. You see that a lot in movies. That, to me, is being dishonest. You're not an honest storyteller. You're following the formula. 10% in, you do this. 20% of the way in, that. 30%, 40%, 50%, 60, 70, 80, 90 things you do, whether they relate really to the story, if you're writing an honest story you're trying to bring across or not. X, Y, and Z in surveys, it's been shown, is popular. So author 77 decides, I'm going to copy X, Y, and Z and put it in my book or my movie because it's popular, hoping to sucker people into buying my book or seeing my movie because I'll put it in the trailer. X, Y, and Z is in the movie. Whether it has any real bearing on the plot the story is supposed to be portraying or not. So, back to Rush. Not so foolish-hearted for someone who's out to sucker and con people out of money, right? It's really just your question of your honesty, as Neil Peart wrote in those lyrics of that song. Same thing here with AI. People going to AI, tell me a story about such and such, or I'm writing an article with these key points, fill in the blanks for me. That's dishonest. It's dishonest. It should be illegal. In my mind, that's plagiarism, pure and simple. It may not be technically yet under the law, the copyright law that will not have caught up to our modern times, but this is all like Rush sang about the music industry then and writing regarding books and movies and online articles today, modern technology as part of the creation and or delivery process. I wanted to make this show specific to that. But yes, aspects and other aspects will be in the Liberty, excuse me. I cleared my throat on one episode. The phone rang on another episode, and now I'm burping on this episode. That's laughter. I'm saying that out loud for benefit of those reading the transcript. I'm going to leave it in because, again, how many times have I said, I'm just going to be raw and uncut and upfront and honest with you that this is the no muss, no fuss show. You're getting it as I'm giving it, blemishes and all. At any rate, which I've addressed, I have come into the bad habit of using far too often now. At any rate, AI, and it will be something else down the road. Technology is always changing. How we choose to accept or reject as a level of our moral compass, our personal desire to be honest or not matters. So let me throw back again. Hopefully now I put the Rush, the Spirit of Radio tune in your head. I'm laughing again for the benefit of the transcript readers. That happens to me all the time. I'll be online and somebody will say something just the way my brain works. Bam! Musical tune is now in my head because a word or another was there and borrowed it. But back to that webinar, it was called Save the Cat. So not only was she dishonest, in my opinion, dealing in formulaic writing herself, she wasn't even imaginative in her stealing of how to peddle formulaic writing. Save the Cat. Think Hunger Games. And Hunger Games, the books, the movies, very formulaic, which is not to say I didn't enjoy I didn't read the books. I enjoyed the movies. They can still be entertaining, but it is what it is. And I'm being honest about what it is. It could still be enjoyable, but for somebody like me, and now you, that understands this formula concept that people are really just copying, cut and pasting, and changing names, dates, and locations to fool you, to sucker you into buying their now copy, not an original piece. She stole from the Hunger Games, calling it Save the Cat, because Save the Cat is normally metaphorical or analogical, a demonstration of that 10% in to, and I get this with a movie. Let me make this clear while I'm thinking about it. There's a difference in a movie and a book. Obviously, a book, you have more time and space to fill in things. You can, could, should not be formulaic in a book, whereas movies are usually going to be more formulaic because they only have an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours to get across some points and to get you to feel a certain way about a character or characters. Although I saw Argyle the other day, loved the movie Argyle because there's a bunch of twists and turns and plot shifts and, oh, wow, are they really a good guy or a bad guy? Or, as I've discussed in the Gray Areas Parts 1 and Part 2 shows and TLB pieces, gray area. No one is necessarily all good. No one is necessarily all bad. There's a lot of gray area in between. So Argyle takes you on a roller coaster journey of flip-flopping of, whoa, what? Are they good? Are they bad? I don't know. It's very entertaining. But Hunger Games. In Hunger Games, Save the Cat methodology is literal. Now, I use the word literal, but I'm talking about a fictional story. So obviously, it isn't literal. It's still figurative, but I think you understand what I mean when I use the word literal, that Katniss, literally, Katniss and crew come upon a lost, starving kitten. What does Katniss do? Insist on saving the cat. Get how they stole that as part of the formula, and that formulaic concept is showing how your character, if it's a hero, is morally superior to anyone and everywhere around there, establishing early on, this is the hero of our story. You're supposed to like this person, gravitate to this person, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Try to find a more imaginative way of doing it, please, in a book at least. But the crew, oh, we're all starving already. We cannot have another mouth to feed, let alone it be this cat. Leave the cat behind. Katniss, no, we must save the cat to demonstrate I'm the hero, my moral superiority over all others. Again, in a movie, you've got short time to establish your heroes and villains. again, unless, of course, you're doing plot twists later where the hero really is the villain. They were fooling you to try to let you think it was the hero, but in the end, they're the villain. Or you've seen that too. That is a formula in and of itself. Now, that's not to say that certain elements aren't going to be in virtually any and every book. My point here about honesty, I mentioned XYZ. Let me borrow that for this, whether it fits. Does X, Y, and Z really honestly fit in the story, or are you copying it to be dishonest, to try to sucker people into buying it? That is my point here. Try to use some imagination. Bottom line, going back to AI, the moral question of what you can use of it to maybe spur some of your own thoughts and originality, as opposed to letting it do the work and you cut and pasting it and claiming it, in my mind, that's plagiarism, as your own or not. And that's what this episode, bottom line, really is about. Your morality, your honesty, questioning others' morality and honesty. With that, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Oh, I was going to say about the elements. Unless it's like Star Trek, they invented Klingon and Romulan language to have something completely new, something completely different. Nobody else has this because we invented that specifically for this. Great. That's wonderful. But other than that, other aspects of the Star Trek stories are obviously borrowed elements. They're often telling the same moral of the story type delivery of a message in an episode or a movie. So does your element fit? And language. There are only so many certain words in the English language. Now, yeah, the dictionary is pretty thick, and there is such a thing as a thesaurus. So you can avoid using the same words as everybody else to some degree, but you're still limited unless if, like Flowers for Algernon, if you read that in school as part of classical literature, which pretty much none of which is being read, it's all radicalism, raunch, and perversion, and CRT garbage books in the schools rather than the classic books. Flowers for Algernon obviously was very different and a novel concept, yeah, pun intended. The novel concept in that novel being, of course, the person's mental incapacity and diminished ability. No side attempted jab at Joe Biden here, but some of you will assume such. In certain parts of Flowers for Algernon, the grammar, the punctuation, the spelling is purposefully made a mess to show his lack of education and state of mind versus later, versus then the regression at the end of the book. Very wonderful new concept there. Those type of brand new and completely different, brilliant story deliveries are going to be few and far between because we all have shared life experience and shared like past books, past movies, past music that is going to influence us. But I'm saying do not consciously try to borrow just to copy, to take a shortcut for you to cheat, for you to be dishonest. I hope I've driven that point home. I've tried to cover it and explain it as many different ways as I could within the framework since this is a podcast, it's an entertainment show as well as hopefully educational. It's a audio and video media on the internet. So using technology, demonstrating the issues, bottom lines of morality, honesty, or dishonesty is the same old message throughout all time. Just the different times have brought about different questions of whether you're willing to be honest or not. Thank you all for tuning in. Take care and God bless. Go. Hello to a second segment of an AI show, and this makes sense to me as a second segment, as we will be talking writing and publishing, and AI is in that mix now. So those of you looking on the behind the scenes video version of the show can see the guests and probably thinking, oh no, not that chick again.
Oh, no.
Just kidding. Just a little fun, loving jab. Welcome back to the show, Elizabeth Enton.
Hi, thank you for having me back.
Yeah. Hey, if I didn't like you, I wouldn't joke with you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ed Bondarenka, and I host Your American Heritage on Saturdays at 2 in the afternoon on this station. Your American Heritage is a show about the struggle we find ourselves in and how to react to it in the light of our biblical and American heritage. Listen to it while you're working around the house, the garage, cleaning the guns, walking the dog, driving, or just lazing around. Join me at 2 o'clock Saturdays here on Wham Radio, 1600 AM, 92.7 FM.
God bless America.
I totally get it. I'm not offended. I joke around a lot with my friends too, and people too. So I'm not offended by those kinds of things.
First thing, hopefully people, if they haven't already seen the January special with you, will go back after this and watch it. But also for those looking on video, I've got your book here.
You have my book.
And
Thank
the
you.
very first thing I got to start with, though, is I'm actually surprised. And I say this, not saying I wasn't expecting anything from you or out of you. I don't mean that. What I mean is I'm surprised at myself, and I'm worried others might make the same bad assumption. I have no idea why. I didn't ask you how many pages. I don't remember you volunteering how many pages, but I was expecting 200 pages. This is a thick book. You are very thorough in this book.
It's a thick book. I have to give a disclaimer, though. It's written very fun and lightly, despite talking about science and grief, two kind of thick topics. And people have said, in fact, I've gotten to that in a lot of reviews, that people have said it's actually just a really fast read. Like, I kind of want to make like a beach read personality to some heavy topics.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the last page with a number on it is 449. And of course, there are other.
Don't be intimidated.
No.
Please. I promise it's like a really, I write in a super conversational tone. So, I don't want to feel like a thick, dense book at all. So.
Yeah. I was expecting, I don't know what, but I got War and Peace. No. Just kidding.
Right. I'm not that good a writer, but I'll take it. Thank you.
But again, I don't know what gave me that impression that I thought, was a 30,000 foot view, quick 200-page read. And so I wanted to address that first in case others accidentally got that impression, which again, I don't know why.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's probably because I speak about it in a light tone because, again, it's a fast read. People have said, I think it also looks a little longer because the way I do the dialogue, I do it that uses a little more space. I mean, not that that would make that many extra pages, but the spacings, I use like play script dialogues, blog dialogue style, so I think that's how a lot of people, we're always reading little memes and little blog posts, and that's how dialogue's written there. So again, that's part of making it a very engaging, more, as people said, kind of a blog tone, fast read, despite when people look at the book.
And before we go any further, holding up the book, those who see it on behind the scenes video, that's great, but this is an audio show mainly. So, of course, we need to tell them the title. WTF Just Happened. And about a sciencey skeptic explores grief, healing, and evidence of an afterlife. So before I forget, so the audio people, and now it will be in the transcript of the show, they know what we're talking about. And I wrote down dialogue. I want to circle back to that later then. But the other thing that kind of surprised me was there's no table of contents.
Yes, there is. Oh my God, I've got to speak to one of my editors then. We have a table of contents, I promise.
Author note, half title page. Forward,
where did you order it off of?
Introduction, Amazon, chapter 1, no TOC.
It's in there, and I see it on my Kindle one. I just was using my Kindle, reading off it for my audiobook. I have to reach out to Amazon and my producer because there's that's a glitch. I'm really sorry. It's supposed to have one. The one my one does. So I think there might have been maybe there's a glitch batch, which unfortunately I heard sometimes happens to Amazon. And I am so glad you told me that, because I'm going to reach out to them today and say what is going on. Because I can even look at the PDF or whatever it is, or .mov that I upload. It's there. So I think I can't tell you why it's not supposed to do that, but
I have had books I've ordered of My Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a city near you. I'd only ever had one book that was a misrun. Pages were missing, but missing a beginning or an ending pages makes how a table of contents would accidentally get left out is really weird and bizarre.
I'm glad you told me. I am going to look at that today, because that's very weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten the author copies. I've bought copies that, I sell at events, and it's there. So I'm going to check my latest batch and see.
Okay, well,
I'm so sorry about that. I feel that doesn't look as professional as I was.
Well, that's not on you then, but that ends that line of questioning as to why would anybody leave out a table of contents? I'm sure someone somewhere could argue why you wouldn't do that, and I thought I might get a defense of that from you, but that was that's a mistake. That's a mistake. Right,
and I guarantee it's not on all copies, because I've literally been working off of my table of contents on my Kindle version, reading my audiobook. So I'm going to go look at that today.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I literally can put this in the mail to you. I
believe you. I trust you. Don't worry. I'm going to just make sure.
I've looked over and over several times. You know what I need to do? I need to go on Amazon. And the reason I thought, why would anyone leave out a table of contents, is because most books are sold online now, and most people want to cheat. They want to use, like Amazon has, the look inside feature to find the table of contents and see those chapter titles. So I thought that was really odd. Now, after we're done recording, I'm going to go on Amazon too, do a look inside your book, and confirm the table of contents is there or not too.
Let me know, because if not, I'm going to have to do a re-upload or reach out to them, or, was it a mistake mistake in a re-upload I did, but I don't think so. I can't see how. I'm curious. You tell me if you find anything about that.
Yeah.
So
Well, let this be a lesson to any potential authors looking to publish. Sometimes things go wrong, right? You've got to stay on top of it all. But like you said, you read preview copies. There was supposedly no issue. So I'd be curious when you do reach out to Amazon, what they say in response. I'm dying of curiosity. But now you mentioned dialogue, because I have an issue, and I have, reviews can go anywhere on the web, right?
Yes.
There's not just Amazon, there's Books A Million, there's Barnes and Noble, and there's Goodreads, there's Bigfoot,
yes.
all kinds of places reviews could go. But sadly, sometimes, like at Barnes and Noble, if there aren't any reviews, people assume no one's buying the book. And that sometimes can be, not farther from the truth. But people don't think in those terms. So I created a terrorstrikes.info/reviews page to bring them all together. But the reason I mention that is on the reviews page that I got a review that someone gave me a somewhat negative review. A kind other purchaser of my book gave me a review basically rebutting that person's review, because they were, again, this has to do with assumptions for whatever reason. I never claimed to be a dialogue narrative type. I am a descriptive narrative writer. But for whatever reason, they wanted more dialogue. So they didn't give me a good review, citing there wasn't enough dialogue. I never claimed there would be a lot of dialogue. And, just because you didn't find what you assumed you might, what about the substance of the book apart from that? But like I said, another reviewer kindly came back and said, there's two different types of narrative, and he's just not the dialogue type. I didn't put a lot of dialogue, but I mention that because in a book like this, you wouldn't expect dialogue, but yet you're saying you used it as a delivery mechanism to bring part of the points across.
There's a lot of dialogue because I share the science of afterlife evidence by sharing my story of how I explored it, which involves a lot of conversations. I share some of my personal conversations just about grief and socializing. Like I make it in a very, because I think sometimes when people are reading to get information, sometimes it can be presented in a dry way. So I wanted to make it like taking someone along my experiences, what was going on in my brain while I was just having these kind of crazy experiences, as well as emotional experiences, and making it like, I'm not like I'm teaching you or you're in a lecture in a school, but like we're sitting down, we're friends, we're having a coffee, and I'm like, oh my God, you have no idea. The craziest things happened. And that's the tone of my book rather than you're going to a university lecture. And I mean, both have their merits and both, you can learn a lot from both, but just who I am and how my personality is more like, hey, let's get a coffee. Oh my God. Like I'm going to talk. My writing is as if I'm talking to you rather than,
exactly
professorial or, literary. And I appreciate reading all of the above, but my writing style's one way.
That's exactly the point of why I bring it up, is there are different writing styles. And, I forget the book. Is it The Great Gatsby? Either is all dialogue or no dialogue. I forget which of the two, but the reviewer
I think it's no dialogue from what I wrote, because I don't remember. I'm visualizing reading it, and I don't remember dialogue. But I haven't read it in a long time. So.
Same with me. That's why I don't remember. But they used it as an example in their review. So there's different writing styles, and each person may have their preference, and that's kind of the point. Now, normally would save to an end of the segment. How do people reach out? Where do they get your book? We've already discussed it's available at Amazon. Now, like I have terrorstrikes.info/shop, a shop. People can order autographed copies of my books direct from me. Can they get an autographed copy of your book from you anywhere?
Yeah, you know what? I should add that to my website because I've mainly just been doing that in-person events, but I should add that because my website links to all the places you can buy it, because just as of 2 weeks ago, it's on Barnes and Noble. It used to just be on Amazon. Now it's on everywhere. If you want to support indie shops, it's on them. It's been distributed everywhere.
Yeah.
So you can go to my website, WTFjusthappened.net, and I'm getting good feedback from you. Fix the table of contents, fix this. Yeah, I will add an option just to buy an autographed copy directly from me.
Right.
Because as of now, that's just been at in-person events. But
yeah, I mean, I like it, if whenever possible, to get an autographed copy from the author. I mean, that's just a nice added thing to have as part of your book on the bookshelf. So I wanted to remember before I forgot to ask that, so that was a possibility. The other thing I really wanted to touch on, because we've been discussing behind the scenes offline, you've entered the phase of, like, I just dropped ChristiTutionalist Politics, the book, audiobook, exclusively through Google Play. And you and I have been conversing about you're in the audiobook phase. How's that going?
It's going. I got, it was going pretty well. To be honest, I got sick and I lost my voice, so things are really behind. It's fun though. Like, I'm having to re-record parts of it, which I think is just part of the process. And what I've done for the dialogue is, for some of the people, I'm getting some people to read themselves, which is really fun. When I
Oh,
can,
that's
not
great.
Yeah. I can't get everybody, because people are busy, and you can only some people have the time and interest to do this. Some are too busy, and some are like, oh God, I don't want my voice anywhere. So, you have to respect what people say. And somebody, who is a big character in the book who's passed away, I hired a voice actor, because I was trying, she has a very intense voice and she's very important to me. And every time I tried to even imply her voice, I sounded like I was mocking her. And I'm like, oh God, that's the opposite of what I want. And so I hired an voice actor as an actor.
Yeah.
And it was very emotional, like getting to hear the words in her voice again. So it was kind of special experience too.
Yeah.
So
Audiobooks are nice, and I've had people asking for my Terror Strikes book to be on audio. And I have an audiobook page on my website that I suggest instead they do it on a device that Alexa or Siri can just read it to them. You don't really need an audiobook. And a lot of publishers are indeed dissuading people from doing audiobooks for that very reason. The technology can just do any book as an audiobook for you, but it's nice, like with what you're doing, to have the actual author reading it and or other voices like you're introducing. But that's the other aspect. When you bring in other people, especially voice actors like Terror Strikes, I'd need 3. One, the narrator, one, my character, and one that deals with a letter to the editor that's in there. And therefore, that cost means my ROI might never happen. Are you worried about that at all?
No, well, because I'm only hiring one person. Like, in a perfect world with more money at this point, hopefully down the line, I would hire someone to do every single voice of the people who didn't want to do them themselves. There isn't so much dialogue. It hasn't cost that much. And I also think in a perfect world, well, in terms of just finding out that Siri and apps can read it for you, I kind of like that because in a perfect world, again, I think I would like to give the listeners the option to have me read it or a professional. And you can get both. You get both, and or you choose which one you want to buy and get a sample of both because, it's a different experience. I'm the author, it's my story. No one knows the intonations, the emotions better than me. I'm not a professional audio recorder. And some people, some people write mean reviews of my podcast. Some write great reviews, but some people are like, her voice is this. I'm like, well, that's my voice. What can I do about it? And I do work on it as a podcaster, but it's my voice. I'm not and there's a different audio experience when you listen to a professional voice actor or voiceover expert. They have a level of refinement. I mean, I can't compete with that if that's what you want. They've worked on their voice. That's what they do full time for years. They probably are actors anyway. They're, singers. I mean, voice is their expert. That's not, no, I don't have as beautiful a voice as a voice actor. And, some people prefer the authenticity. Some people want that very professional voice. And I think I tend to like to buy books from the authors because there's a layer of emotion in it that is missing from the professional. But I know that's a personal choice, and I would like to give my audience the choice, but it's like, at this point it's so much money. I'm like, and now knowing that if they prefer to have it more professional, but I would think a certain soul would be missing from it listening to the series. And so if you're buying a more professorial academic book or informative book, great. Like I would probably like that. But again, mine's like very conversational, and intonation's really like the key of the book.
I think that's an important point. The type of book it is makes a difference as to whether you want the author or just, a voice actor or an AI reading it being fine. But I think we've got the headline for the show. Liz admits her voice is subpar.
Oh no!
Just playing.
Oh, no!
I'm just playing. Just all
That's
in
hilarious.
good fun. Just another loving tease.
Oh, well, an interesting thing I want to share with you, because I just heard it because you mentioned AI at the beginning of this. It's become a little bit of a scandal in the politics world, but there's apparently, because it was used for political calls, like tricking people, but there's a company now that does audio voices, and it's for not much money. I was listening to a podcast about it. For $5 you can upload like 20 seconds, I mean a very small amount, maybe it was like 5 minutes max, of somebody's voice, and then you can type in words and they'll use that person's voice. And I was like, that would be great to do people for the audiobooks, but I don't know how it would sound, I don't know how authentic, but also to do it ethically. I wouldn't do that without someone's permission and be like, oh, well, I have this person, like a call with them, and now I can do that with their dialogue. Like they would have to authenticate that. But I think, out of ethics and respect. But for people who are really busy and don't want to read their own lines and they're in dialogue, or for voice actors to, I think there's a lot of questionable ways it can be done, because I don't think it's really fair to take someone's voice and monetize it without them getting kickbacks. Or if it's a person you're writing about, non-professional, I could do that with any of the characters, and doing that without their permission, I would feel like the worst person in the world, or a bad person, not the worst, but pretty horrible.
That is exactly why this segment is added on to the AI. That's it. The ethics of AI in publishing, or, as you said, deep fakes for fraud, fraudulently trying to portray something as someone having said something that isn't what they've said, never would say. And even just the use of AI for book content, plagiarism laws and copyright laws will have to, over the next several years, catch up and be modified, because like the deal with Claudine Gay and plagiarism, not having given proper attribution to things that should have been quotes she portrayed as her own words. To me, I would never use ChatGPT or any of these for that very reason. To me, it's dishonest to do so, to say, oh, here's my topic, here's a few bullet points, have it spew it out, and then you claim it as your own. Whether the terms of service of their product allow it or not, and sometimes we're already discovering the chatbots are plagiarizing. So you may be plagiarizing somebody else thinking it was the AI that came up with it, when really the AI, which mainly gets its content from other internet providers, lifted it also. So not only honesty and ethics, you could put yourself into legal jeopardy doing that.
Right. And I hear people get kicked off Amazon, like if they think you're plagiarizing. And, I have mixed feelings. You should be kicked off if you're plagiarizing 100%. But they also don't have humans checking it. They don't review that. So it's these
AI
bots, and then
AI
and
is
then
doing
AI
the
is
checking.
kicking. So people are getting unfairly kicked off. And now I'm a little worried, because my next book, I have like there's portions where it's quotes from magazines, but they're about me. And I'm like, and I clearly credit it, or I'm quoting like a whole paragraph from Wikipedia, but I clearly say that. But I'm like, could an AI bot like go through? Then you're banned from Amazon. Or they say if you do AI with your photos, like, maybe people, I don't know, like, it just seems like, I think people who, obviously there's a lot of people who are, I've even heard, stealing other people's work and taking credit for it on Amazon, and they should be kicked off. But it's just, people just get a note, their account's been terminated. And it seems like, because I'm in other groups, that I'll see that and I'm like, but the person's whole livelihood's messed up and they haven't done anything wrong. It's just because it's, I think there should be like a quote unquote trial, like a type of trial,
Yes.
before you're kicked off, and you have to explain. And if you're like, oh, I quoted this, or, oh, apparently my cover was plagiarized and I didn't know it, and I hired someone and paid them $1,000 to do my cover, and because there's a lot of innocent mistakes. And I think people should not be automatically kicked off. You should get one warning and tell you why, because people aren't told why.
Yeah,
so.
They should be given, like you said, a cover. You hire somebody and they lifted an image. You have no idea. You should be given a chance to correct that situation, to change your cover. Absolutely. And it's like pulling teeth to get a human to talk to appeal anything. Because you're right, these companies have their own terms of service. They're their own entity. There is no such thing as due process under law based on our constitutional right in that situation. Because ChristiTutionalist Politics 2, that I planned for June of this year, is going to have several pages, a whole chapter of quotations. And now you got me worried.
Right. And if so I'm like, the bot could find that, like, I have pages that are published somewhere else. Yeah, they're quotes and they're about me. And then a Wikipedia one that's about the topic that I'm talking about, Wikipedia. So if a person went through, if it was flagged by an AI and then a person looked and then they saw and they're like, oh, this is fine. So I don't know, I'm a little nervous. I keep thinking about that. And I'm like, do I talk to Amazon about it? And then, I don't know.
Yeah, you got me a bit worried now too, because even at the end of my quotations chapter, I go out of my way to say, because of the Claudine Gay plagiarism thing, these quotes, to the best of my knowledge, are attributed to the original person who said it, but someone could have lifted it from someone else without my knowledge. I am quoting who I honestly believe to be the originator. But
Right.
is Amazon going to pay any attention to me even having that
Mhm.
specifically in the book, a disclaimer, or just kick me off, like you said?
Usually in these situations, like the unfair ones, you get back on, but it's months. It's like you're losing so much revenue, you're losing, noticeability, and you're losing time. And you're also, I'm sure, super anxious. So you're reaching out, you're having to go through hoops and probably hire somebody and hire experts and like hire lawyers. And it's a nightmare. You do get back on if you haven't done anything wrong, usually, but
in the meantime, your reputation also is in question.
Right. I mean, you could be open about why. If so, like, look, I have these quotes, and it was clear, and they use an AI, I think, but still, I mean, it's not. It's a really unfair way. Again, they should send you an email and say, it's come up, you're going to be kicked off within 2 weeks if you don't address this. Then you address it, and if you're like, this is the quote, this is the thing, is that not allowed? Then a human would say, oh yeah, that's fine,
Yeah,
or no, that's not, change it, or leave.
Yeah, and I think a big part of the problem is I'm a former IT guy. There's a lot of people out there that think AI was like invented yesterday and has just started to be used now. No, it's becoming more prevalent and you're hearing about it more, but it's been in use for, when you use Microsoft Word and click spell and grammar check, that's AI. And it's unfortunately bad AI because how I often talk about it. Hopefully one day we'll get smart enough. It needs to be smarter. That's why you need an editor, because of the to problem, right? To, T-O, T-O-O, T-W-O. Grammar check won't catch the wrong to. Whereas if AI were smart enough, as it should be, it should take the context of the paragraph and say, well, obviously, or at least prompt the reader, this could be an issue. Are you sure this is the right to you're looking for here? So again, I bring that up because in How to Write a Book and Get It Published, Hints, Tips, and Techniques, I talk about the importance of hiring a professional editor whose language is English, primarily English, not as their second language, because you can get editing done cheaply out of India, but they're not PhD, Oxford trained, and actually understand the Chicago writing guide stylings.
Right. I mean, and the average person trained doesn't, I mean, when I'm going through with my editor now, there's things that he's like, no, you actually have to do it. I'm like, just the little things I wouldn't know. Like when I put numbers in dialogue or doctor, I have to write it out. That's one thing I learned. If it's in dialogue, if it's otherwise, you put it as a number and then a certain number. I mean, just things you don't know if you're not highly trained.
And a professional editor is there to catch that for you because they understand the proper Chicago writing guide style guidelines and look for those things that we, as somebody without a PhD would aren't going to catch. And same with someone abroad. You might save a few bucks, but you might make yourself look foolish in the long run by having a less quality book. So you want to find a good publisher and a good editor that's helping you. You can do it on the cheap and just upload anything to Amazon, but you'll probably pay for it in the reviews. I had a friend whose daughter teases her father endlessly because of a book he put out that wasn't professionally edited. And she teases him endlessly about the poor grammar in her father's book.
Oh no. You get your family, your kids will make fun of you. Not only bad reviews, your kids will never let you live it down. So
Now,
that's
unless
hilarious.
it's like, I'm not sure growing up you had to read Flowers for Algernon or not. Now,
Yes,
of
I did.
course, bad grammar, improper spellings, silly placements of punctuation were part of the whole point of the book, to show the development stages of the person who had
Right.
educational values. But your book, one would assume, isn't doing that, and you want it
Overall, in parts of the
Yeah.
dialogue, or I do playful words like sciency. That's I people have started to use it more, so it's become a real word. I do like I text stuff. There's little things I do, but
Right.
overall, yeah.
Yeah,
But it's clear. You have to know you're doing it wrong, and it has to have a purpose, you know?
exactly. There is a point to what you're doing, and that's part of the going back and forth with the editor. Unfortunately, editors, while they're getting paid well, I dare say are kind of lazy. They should read your book front to cover first, then go back and edit. Because, like with my book, the
Mine
editor,
does that. I have an
Oh,
amazing editor.
oh, that's good.
Miles.
A
Huge
lot-
shout out to Miles. He's not lazy. He's awesome. So
yeah, a lot of editors will just jump in the first chapter and start marking things. Well, you can't know if something is purposely said a certain way as a foreshadow for a callback later. Or there's points and purposes to why I chose a certain word that, maybe if I were writing Shakespeare wouldn't be the right one, right? But I'm not writing Oxford King's English. I'm purposely engaging, like you said, in a bit of wordplay.
right. And especially like in the dialogue parts. Like if I'm writing dialogue, people that you enjoy speaking with don't speak so flawlessly. I'll put
Right.
it that way. You sometimes get the pretentious, and that creates a distance when someone speaks so perfectly. You know what I mean?
Oh,
And unless they're giving a lecture, but there's like you feel a distance and you feel more engaged with people who are speaking informally. So there's things I write in the dialogue that are imperfect grammar, and so
right.
I mean, I think that's important. Like a lack of perfect grammar at times can have like a sonatic, is that the right word? Like intonations that like engage you. And I think that can be really a great tool to bring to writing if you're wanting to
Right.
kind of be equal to the readers. There's like the be
Yes.
equal, you're my friend. There's again, as we we're talking about the tone where I'm the expert and I'm educating, or I mean, there's very different tones, but it's a different
Yeah,
flow or rhythm,
you're-
depending on the role you're trying to be with
right.
the readers.
Dialogue between two people, you would assume the two people generally know each other and therefore are going to engage each other in a certain, so you want them to sound like normal average people on your block. Whereas if they sound like they're from the Queen's Court, all pretentious and uptight, you're right. Not unless if that's necessary for the character, it's going to put off a lot of people.
Exactly. And it just, I don't even necessarily think it's always a conscious put off, like, oh, that's so proper. It's just like you'll be reading something, and you've read 3 pages and nothing's gone in your head. I think if you don't draw people in a real friend way, unless again, it's like an educational book and an expert teaching you the material and you're excited about it, unless like, that casual language draws people in. I think a lot of it's too formal. You're reading and reading and you're like, wait, what did I just spend the past 5 minutes reading and nothing's gone in? And, so
Absolutely.
I'm sure we've all had books like that.
Okay, well, as you know, I discussed on the show you were on before, I tend to try to not go very long. Today's Twitter attention span, I call it. Any episode that's long, you're not going to get many new people come in on, because They want short and quick. If once they like you and think your shows have good content, they'll come for the longer ones. So I'm going to draw it to a close here. So again, tell us where to find you.
Right. So my book is WTF Just Happened. A Sciencey Skeptic Explores Grief, Healing, and Evidence of the Afterlife. My second book will be coming out in April. It's going to be WTF Just Happened with a different tagline that we haven't finalized because the WTF staying the brand. You can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, but you can link to all of them through my website, WTFJustHappened.net. And you can also find my podcast there, which is also WTF Just Happened, all about the afterlife, no woo.
Yeah,
So
and that's
it.
another thing I'll throw in just before we conclude. We discussed this offline. The fact that you're using WTF can cause red flags all over the place because people, are taking it as your swearing. If
I am swearing. I swear, if you don't like swearing, you won't like my book. I mean, I don't use it gratuitously, but I think it is part of normal human dialogue, which ties into the personality. It's how I speak. So if you don't, and you have a right. If you don't want to read it, don't buy my book. With all due respect, I don't mean that rudely, but
right. But like today's social media, a lot of that your book could be flagged because they may think it troll activity. Somebody, saying that to, you know what I mean? So I just wanted
I'm blocked from I can't advertise it on Amazon. And I did funny social media posts about that. If anyone goes to my Instagram, which you can find them from my website. Yeah, they blocked it. I can't advertise. So I wrote a 99-cent mini book that basically summarizes a little bit of this. I tell them why. I'm like, if you want to buy my main book, this is here. But I can't, so I can advertise. It's a funny story.
Yeah. All right. Have a good one, Liz.
Okay.
Talk to you
later.
Thank
you so much. So good to talk to you again. Stay in touch.
Thank you for having tuned in for ChristiTutionalist Politics Show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you, or autographed copies are available online direct from me via terrorstrikes.info/shop. Be sure to check out more about today's discussion at thelibertybeacon.com, where my articles drop every Saturday. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff. No fancy high production intro or inserts, at least yet, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help to grow the show.
It is a myth that terrorism stopped during COVID. Unfortunately, mainstream media opted to prioritize pandemic hysteria over promoting all news. Terrorism continues. Simply hoping that it doesn't affect you is not a strategy. The new book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you, featured on The Author Show, is now available in paperback from bookstores, online, or as an ebook exclusively through Amazon Kindle. Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you by Joseph M. Leonard. Order today.